it was almost rammed down our throats, like work-life balance, work-life balance, work-life balance. And it is. But the people preaching that like aren't practicing veterinary medicine in the real world.
Right.
You know, they're the ones that have their tumble schedule. They're not on call. They're not doing this. They're not getting this financial stress. They're like, oh, work-life balance, it's like sugar and rainbows. And it is so hard because I feel like the culture of veterinary medicine is the exact opposite of work-life balance.
Hi, guys, and welcome to the House Call Vet Cafe podcast. I'm Dr. Eve Harrison. I'm a full-time integrative concierge house call veterinarian in Los Angeles, and I help other vets to build their unique mobile practices on their terms. This podcast is for and by house call and mobile veterinarians, so it is meant to give our community a platform to connect, to share our stories, to lift each other up, and to support each other. Most of us work solo as lone wolves, right? So for me, it's been really powerful to be able to physically hear the voices of my colleagues from all over the world and to get a chance to feel that we truly are part of a community of very real other human beings who get it. While you may be alone in that little bubble of your own vehicle when you're on the road seeing patients, I welcome you to join our community by tuning into our own podcast when you're on your way to your next house call. Whether you're a super experienced house call vet with 30 years of experience, you're a brand new prospective house call vet just looking to get started, or you're house call curious, there will be something for you in this podcast. Each episode, you will hear interviews from other mobile veterinarians just like yourself who are doing unique and innovative things, vets who are sharing their stories, their struggles and challenges, and you can also look forward to hearing valuable information and perspectives from specialists and experts outside of our micro niche. And finally, if becoming a house call veterinarian is something that you've been thinking about exploring, or you're looking for some extra support getting your own mobile practice to feel more profitable and sustainable for you, check out the information in the show notes about my course and our above and beyond supportive private community for members only, plus our monthly group coaching sessions within the House Call Vet Academy. You can also check out my free public Facebook group, which is also called the House Call Vet Cafe, the same name as this podcast, and which is a warm and cozy community for mobile vets to support each other in professional and personal development, in creative entrepreneurship, and in friendship. So thank you guys for spending time with me today. Let's dive into the episode.
If you're looking for help with ultrasound scanning, whether that's choosing a new machine or developing your ultrasound skills, check out the First Opinion Veterinary Ultrasound website at fovu.co.uk for independent machine reviews and online and in-person teaching options. Fovu, simplifying ultrasound.
Okay, guys, today we have a really cool guest on. It is Dr. Valerie Coerver, spelled Coerver, and I had to ask how to pronounce it. I just am a big fan of your last name. But anyway. So Dr. Valerie is born and raised in rural southeastern Oklahoma. She attended St. Matthew's University, graduated in 2014 in Grand Cayman, and did her clinical rotation at Washington State University, which she loved, followed by an ag animal internship, which it sounds like not so much loved. We'll get into that. Dr. Valerie worked at various clinics in Oklahoma and Texas and finally decided to go out on her own as a house call practitioner. She's been doing full-time house call work for over 3 years and was part-time 3 years prior to that, so a total of 6 years. And her mobile business started as strictly large animal practice and quickly evolved into mixed animal practice. She now sees about 70% small animal appointments. So welcome, Dr. Valerie. I know we have a lot to talk about. You were like, okay, I think we need to just hit the record button because we have so much to say already. So I can't wait for you guys to hear what she's got to say, a really unique and interesting perspective. So I wanted to first start out how I always start out my episodes. Can you tell me what is your favorite snack to eat in the car or the truck or whatever it is you drive?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I drive a truck and I have multiple ones, but I really they're called F-bombs and they're macadamia nut butter packets. And they come in all different flavors and they're delicious. And so I love my F-bombs, but also cashews, things that stay in the truck pretty well. And then, of course, tacos. There's always time for tacos.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you remind me, actually, are you practicing now in Oklahoma or are you practicing in Texas?
So I'm in Waco, Texas. I've been in Waco for the last, I think, 6 years, going on 6 years, 5 or 6 years.
Okay. All right. Can you tell me a little bit about what drove your decision to become a house call vet and a little bit about that transition from strictly large animal to mixed and, just how that all happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So going through vet school, I always had a passion for large animal medicine, and really probably third year of vet school, I really got interested in production medicine and client education and herd health. And so that's kind of what fueled that. After completing a partial ag animal internship, worked at different rural clinics and always wanted to see more large animal cases, everything like that. And just couldn't find my niche. Like I felt like I couldn't find a clinic that I really gelled with, that I could fit in, that I could practice the type of medicine that I wanted to practice.
Mhm.
And I feel that a lot of associate veterinarians fresh out of school kind of get stuck in the same position. It's like you're not really treated like a doctor, you're treated like kind of a glorified technician.
Yeah.
Get the mentoring you want, but it's got to be done my way.
Right.
So I did that enough, and I think I struggled with it enough to finally that I wanted to go out on my own. And so I gotten a job opportunity from a small animal clinic in Waco, and they recruited me pretty hard, and they convinced me. And they're strictly small animal, and they said, "Hey, you know what? You love large animal. If you want to start your own large animal mobile business on the side, like you go for it. Like we're never going to expand into that. If you want to do it on evenings and weekends and your afternoon off, as long as it doesn't interfere with you working here, go for it." Yeah.
Sounds like
So yeah, so that was really supportive. And so that's kind of how Waco Mobile Vet was born, is just word of mouth. I moved to Waco for this job opportunity, but didn't even research if Waco had mobile vets, if there was a need. And turns out there was a massive need. But
usually there is.
and so I just had a passion for original medicine. And I wanted to see horses and cattle and sheep and goats in producers. And so not advertising, just by word of mouth, meeting people coming to the small clinic. Over the course of a year and a half, it grew and grew to where my phone was ringing all the time when I was at the clinic.
Mhm.
And I was having to turn down appointments, those large animal appointments that I really wanted to see because I was working there. And so you go back and forth a lot, and I prayed about it a lot, and you have to do what makes you happy. And so it was scary because I felt like I was finally, 3, 4 years out of school, finally financially stable. And then you want to like take the leap and go out on your own. It's pretty scary. And so I decided to leave that clinic, and I told myself, because I had ridiculous amount of loans coming out of school, like
Mm.
everybody does. I told myself, I'm not going to take another loan out to start a business. I
Right.
just think that's silly.
It
And
is.
so what I did, yeah, what I did for 2 more years is I did half relief work and emergency shifts and then half mobile. And so slowly but surely transitioned over into full time. And so I had that constant income from the relief work or the emergency shifts that made me feel better, which really, looking back on it, I should have just taken the leap. I shouldn't have been scared. I would have been fine, but it's hard when you have this much debt and,
Right.
cost of living is high. And so over the course of 2 years, I switched to almost strictly mobile. And along the way, I figured out that there is a huge need for small animal services in Waco. And so that has actually become the majority of my business now, is small animals. So I still get to see my large animal calls and I enjoy them very much, but it's definitely more seasonal, busier in the spring and the fall, but I see mostly small right now.
Very cool. Can you tell me a little bit about that moment of that transition when you decided to go full time? I have a lot of people in the House Call Vet Academy. We talk about this a lot. Like, when do you make that leap and how do you know? And, there's a lot of ways to approach it. And I would love to hear your experience of what made you know you were ready to make that jump. And, kind of in retrospect, what makes you go back in time and say, hey, I could have actually done this earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had the veterinarian. So I had started working my relief. I was doing 2 days a week consistently at the same clinic. And I'd done that for about a year and a half. And I don't know if it was just my personality or how I was practicing, but there's an older vet and he works part time. He's kind of on the cusp of retirement. And he just told me one time, I was talking to him about something or a protocol or what we need to implement or something. And he just interrupted me and he said, "Valerie, you're never going to be happy until you practice owner."
Ah,
And I totally rejected that. I was shocked. And I was like, "No, don't say that." And he was like, "You're talking like a practice owner." And he was like, "You can work part-time here as much as you want." He said, "But you're not going to be truly happy and fulfilled until you're doing your own thing." all the time. And I totally rejected that because of the fear that I wasn't going to be able to do this financially and I wasn't going to be able to handle all this stuff by myself. And I went home and I remember calling my friend and telling her I'm so upset that he said that. And he was so right. He was 100% right.
Yeah.
So I ended up just doing it. I had support. My sister was really supportive. She's like, just do it. Like, you're already rocking it. Like, you can totally do this full time. If you need to pick up early shifts, I'm sure you can find one. And so it was scary, but I made the jump and I'm so happy I did. Like, I'm not looking back. I mean, you'll never convince me to work in an exam room. Nope, it was upgraded. You know, that's what I tell people. And much happier. My work life balance is better. I get to be my own boss. I get to make my own decisions and see the type of appointments that I want to see and work with the type of people that are great.
That's fantastic. I love hearing that you had a mentor that encouraged you that way. And was that a boss? Like, was he one of the owners of the
It was actually a corporate hospital in town. They're like a smaller corporate. And so he was the chief of staff. So he had worked there full time before they turned corporate.
Mhm.
And then when they turned corporate, they made him chief of staff or medical director, however you want to say it. And so that brought him down to part time. He totally nailed it.
That's
And
incredible. Yeah, like, that actually makes me smile so hard right now because he was telling you something that you needed to grow even though it would hurt him. Like, for him to lose you, he had to sacrifice something to give you that bit of information, and I love that he said that and how he said it, and it actually reminds me, I have people that I talk to where I can see it in them. I'm like, "You are
mhm,
absolutely an entrepreneur. You don't know it yet, but you are, and I
right.
see it in there." And, like, it's incredible. Sometimes someone can see something in you that you're either too afraid to know or that you don't know yet about yourself, but so awesome that you had a colleague encourage you
Yeah,
from.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
incredible.
And I got to see him a couple of months ago. I said, "Do you remember when you told me this?" He's like, "I do." And I said, "You're absolutely right." Because once I left, I was like, man, I thought I was happy and I thought I would be just totally fine doing 2 days a week at this practice and then working, house help stuff like part time, doing both. And I was like, man, you're absolutely right. He's like, I know it was.
That's so cute.
So it was great that it was hard and it was scary, but I'm so glad that he encouraged me to do that, kind of like pushing the baby bird out of the nest type
Yeah,
of a deal.
yeah.
And I still have a great relationship with that clinic. It's a good thing.
That's amazing. I'm so glad to hear of such a supportive colleague,
Yes.
kind of almost like putting that spark in you. So, yay.
And I do try to have really good, strong relationships with area clinics in town just for diagnostic purposes. If there's something that I can't do, that we refer to each other. And so to me, that's very important to have those connections with other clinics and that's in our community for sure.
Yeah, very much agreed. So you're an interesting guest on the show because your practice is mixed and it started out primarily large animal. I would love to hear about your journey into mixed animal house call practice. And for anyone who's listening, I know you have some like great ideas on how to incorporate backyard chickens and
Yeah.
pet goats and things like that. Can you talk to us about that? I'm super excited to hear about
Yes.
that.
And I'm in Waco, and so Waco's, super famous for fixer upper and cheap enjoyment gates. And it's true, everybody is moving to Waco, and everybody wants that HGTV life, and more and more. And it obviously depends what part of the country you're in, and what each town allows. But more and more, I mean, you can have livestock in your backyard in Waco, as long as your neighbors don't care and you're taking care of them. You can have sheep and goats. You can have chickens. Can't have roosters; they're kind of loud. But, potbelly pigs,
Ah,
we'll do bottle caps for a while. And so I ran into this more and more that people want to expand. They just don't want to have a dog or cat anymore. They want to have a backyard chicken so they can have eggs. They want a couple pygmy goats for their kids. They want that like 4-H FFA project. They want to have a potbelly pig.
man, that's the dream.
Yeah, I know. Like just one of everything, right?
Yes.
So
Do you see bees too? Sorry to interrupt. Do you do bees?
no, I don't yet. I have a couple of people, and really that's on my to-do list
Okay.
next year is to
Okay.
start doing CE for bees. Um,
Cool.
read about it and whatnot, but that's a big deal because you can actually get like an ag exemption with bees. That's the easiest way to do it. And so you get a huge tax break. So just like having cattle or other production animals, you can get a tax break on your property taxes. You can do that with bees. Yes.
That's incredible
Yeah.
information. Thank you for that.
Yes, it's really neat. And so they're definitely encouraging people and you can take bee classes around town, do all of that stuff. And so that's on my list because I know eventually somebody's going to call me about their beehive. So
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And once you start treating bees, I'm going to have you back on the show because I want to hear all about
okay,
bee medicine.
I know, but bees are super important. I think we all know that.
Yes.
I definitely want to be part of that for sure. So I could goal in the next year to get educated on all of that.
Very cool. So what percent of your patients are chickens? What percent are pigs? What are goats? And
I so
breakdown?
I see mostly small ruminants. So I see a lot of sheep and goat herds. Very happy with.
So jealous. God.
We just I have a client, and most of them are just like hobbyists. They just have a few, and then I have some production herds, and so we went and worked. I think it was like 70 of spotted war goats, and it was a blast. Took a couple of pre-vet students out with me, and we learned a lot. And so I see mostly small ruminant. I do see a few herds of cows, but it's just kind of a hobby thing, not huge production stuff. And then I see some horses here and there, and then the occasional potbelly pig for a foot trim. So
Yeah. Do you give them beer and stuff?
I haven't. I'm gonna start. We usually just wrestle them. Yeah, make sure you have your earplugs. I forgot my earplugs one time, but I'll never do that again.
Oh
Yeah,
my
a
God.
lot of people sedate, but I could get a hoof trimmed done so fast. I have trouble sedating them, but I did have a veterinarian tell me yesterday that you could introduce a midazolam on them.
Ooh.
And yes, and depending on the size, 5, 6 cc's, and within 5, 10 minutes, they're stumbling around at the door. They're not fighting you. So I think I might use that trick next or the dark beer for sure.
That's awesome.
That definitely does work. So, but yeah, more people are getting livestock as pets. And like I said, people want backyard chickens, they want goats, they want a potbelly pig or these micro mini pigs, which
Yeah.
don't really exist. They still they weigh about 150 pounds. They're always surprised when I tell them that. And they want them and they want them to have the care just like their dogs and cats have care.
Yeah.
So they want to provide all of that preventative care. And that's where I'm here to encourage people that if you're a house pet vet, or you're thinking about becoming a house pet vet and you've just done small animal, you can branch out. You could totally do this. There are some wonderful resources out there. There's some fantastic Facebook groups out there. The vet truck that's just bovine. We have equine vet to vet. We have porcine vet to vet. When I get stuck on cases and I can't get a hold of one of my colleague friends, I could post there. And you can literally have answers within minutes. And sometimes from board certified specialists. I mean, there's a lot of downside and negativity with social media. And this is just one of the great things about being able to network with other vets, especially because we're all house call vets. So I just can't go to the next exam room and ask, a colleague that I'm working with, hey, what do you think about this?
Great, great.
And so I use those resources amazingly. I mean, they've just been great. And so I'm here to tell you that you can do it. And not only is it more rewarding, those clients are going to be more loyal to you because they don't have to call 3 different vets to come out to see all their animals. You can see all of them at one stop, get lovely convenience. And, it increases those bills too, and
Yeah.
so it helps us financially. So I'm here to encourage people to see that backyard chicken, to see those pygmy goats, to maybe look at that potbelly pig for sure.
Fantastic. And so what you mentioned a couple Facebook groups and resources. Do you have any other books that you recommend? Any other groups? Just throw a couple resources at us.
There's a really good, I don't have it in front of me. There's a really good camelid medicine book for the alpacas and the llamas. I do see occasionally those. If you're from Washington, I was like, it's way too hot to have camelids and oh no, 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 no. There's a lot of them down here. There's a lot of them down here. So more alpacas and llamas than I thought I ever would. Live in Central Texas. And there's a sheep and goat medical book out there that's fantastic too. And then just like a really good toxicology book that includes small and large animal. Those would probably be my go-to for sure.
Okay. So you see a lot of toxicology type cases.
It's always good to have on hand.
Okay.
I mean, all the different stuff. They're like, hey, doc, what's this? But what's this?
Oh, the
Then,
plant type.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's always good to have as a reference. I've heard that we were working on an app for that where you can actually do it with your phone, hold it up to the plant, and it'll give you IG. I think.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. I think they're still working on it. I don't know. I'm waiting for that. They could take all my money. I don't care how much that. We'll definitely do that.
Hang on one second. Jason, what's the name of that app? The plant ID app that you use? Seek. Okay. All right, my friend. The app is called Seek. It works. I use it on hike all the time. And because of that app, I've come to realize that there's literally poison hemlock everywhere around where I am. It's
Really?
very scary.
Man, you're like, oh, this is scary.
Yeah, but the app is called Seek, and
Okay.
SEEK, and it's not always 100% right, but you have to use your, like, general knowledge to be like, "That doesn't sound that this is a clover, it's not a tree." You know, like, but more often than not, it's really, really helpful.
Cool. I'm gonna download that. See, awesome.
Yeah,
Too much good information.
yeah.
Very good. But yeah, and like I said, there's so many ways to expand. And it's like, you went to that school and you were on a small animal track, and you were really just learning about large animal for the Napoli.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're gonna get those big questions, you're gonna get those backyard poultry questions. But I find that, if you're just honest with people, say, hey, poultry isn't one of my, strong areas. Let me hop on one of these Facebook groups really quick. Let me ask you that. Let me call my friend. And when you're there and you're open and you're willing to try, people appreciate that so much, And I think when we go into these house calls, it's like, well, we've got to be the expert. We're the doctor. And I think we get on our heads that we have to know every single thing and we have to know the answer to every single question they have. And I have learned more. You learn so much the first couple of years, but I learn stuff every day. I see stuff that I've never seen before, and
Mhm.
that's what I love about practicing botanical medicine is I never get bored. I always see different stuff. It's always making me dive into books, jump on a Facebook group, ask questions, and constantly learning. But people appreciate it so much if you will at least try. I think house calls and small animal are so needed, and it's even needed more in large animal production animal. You always hear these things like, oh, there's a shortage of large animal vets, and we're going to open this vet school and this vet school, and it's going to be focused just on large animal medicine. But the truth of it is I can't make a living just practicing large animal medicine. If I could, I would. I don't have anything against dogs and cats. I love seeing them, but just how the economy is, the debt to income ratio,
Yep.
and also I turn my phone off when I go to bed. So
Good for you.
yes, that's a great boundary. That was another great thing about being my own boss and doing house calls. I set my own schedule and setting boundaries. And there are two other veterinarians in town that do provide large animal services around the clock. And so it's not like I'm leaving the area high and dry. There are other options. And unless I want to leave my phone on 24/7 and go to every single emergency, there's just no way for me in this area to make a living off of just large animal medicine.
Mhm.
And so I'm here to encourage people that, you see all these people that have dogs and cats that need house call services. There's just as many with production animals out there. So
Very cool, and that's so, so interesting. And I was wondering, so you mentioned you have some other house call or large animal vets that keep their phone on 24/7. I know that's an equine thing. I know that that's like the standard or something. How did you have to like go through any sort of process in your brain to be like, it's okay, I don't have to be on every second of the day? How did you come up with a boundary for yourself?
I think I just got severely burnt out
Yeah.
in my I just got severely burnt out right off the bat. And so I chose to go into a ag animal internship at Washington State University after I graduated. And you're already running on empty, after you graduated by your fourth year.
Yeah.
And I went into it because I think it's kind of drilled into our heads that we need mentorship and you need to look for mentorship and this and that. I had a passion for general medicine. I couldn't find anybody that was hiring specifically for that. I wanted to go back to Oklahoma, Texas. And I said, hey, why don't I stick around do an ag animal internship, get that mentorship that I was so craving, I guess, and thought that I needed because that's what was told to me and that's what was taught to me. And, I'll just focus on our general medicine. And then after a year, like, I'll look and that'll make me more, I guess, competitive to get these large animal jobs, which I don't know if that would be true or not. So with the scheduling and how it was set up, it just kind of ended up being a disaster for my physical health and my mental health. I worked 28 out of every 30 days of a month. I was on call for 21 out of those 30 days. And at the time, they've made changes since then, but at the time, the food animal rotation was an elective. And so I didn't always have students or helpers. I had one vet tech. She ended up having an injury that put her out for 4 or 5 months. And then you have many students that have multiple responsibilities that are teaching and that are practicing and they're going here, going there. And so basically I had the AM department to myself for the majority of the time. Yeah.
Sometimes.
So boy, did I learn things really quick. And so I made it about 7 or 8 months into that until I just completely burnt out. And then I have the on-call phone. So when we were called, people would call me at 3, 4 in the morning. They think it's an answering service. And really it's just whatever event is on call and has the phone. And they'll just call to chat with you at 3, 4 in the morning. They've been looking at something and they just wanted advice on this and that.
God.
It wasn't great. I was still having to have my parents help me pay my rent because I wasn't making any money. And unfortunately was not getting any of the mentorship that I was promised or wanted. The resident that was supposed to be my mentor had taken that year off to get to work on her PhD, and they did not tell me that until a month or two into the program.
Oh my God.
And so it was really hard, really difficult. And my family was super supportive. And it's kind of like, I can't quit this. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I decided to step away from it. I love teaching. I have a passion with working with students. I work with pre-vet students from Baylor and through the vet tech program at the community college. But I figured out really quick I didn't want to go into academia. Like I wanted to practice.
Yeah.
7 a.m. journal club is not for me.
Me neither. I hate that shit. I'm sorry. I do.
Had a wonderful clinical year at Washington State, and then the academic internship. I was like, man, I am busting my ass. I am miserable. I'm seeing counselor. I cannot sleep. I am on antidepressants.
Yep.
I am making no money, and I could have literally gone out by myself and at least been making more money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And starting to pay on the loans. And so I think that's when I just got severely burnt out. I know this is a really long answer to your question.
No.
That's when I got burnt out and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I've done that. I've been there, done that. Now, when I worked at some of the mixed clinics, I did have to do some on-call or emergency, but it felt like it was a piece of cake. It felt like,
Yeah.
like I could have a tech that can come in with me, and
Yeah.
I get the emergency fee, I get paid for this. And so I think I had to decide what was going to give. I'm different with the house call is that I do all of my own scheduling.
Great.
Yeah. And so some people have a receptionist, have somebody else that are answering the phone to doing all the scheduling, but I've decided to do my own scheduling and all of that because I can figure out pretty quick if I want to drive out to your house or not. It's going to take me about 30 seconds on the phone with you to decide if I want to take you on the client and if I want to drive out to your house. And if this is the type of call that would be a good fit for both of us, that this sounds better going to a clinic in town, or I'm not going to be able to provide this service the way that we want because I do all of my own scheduling. I don't have a full-time employee. I have 3 technicians and they all work part-time. They all have like 1 day a week. And so I kind of do all the ordering, inventory, all of that stuff. And it's like, I can't do that if you're riding around in the vet truck 24/7. Something's got to give. Yeah, and I like sleeping.
Yes.
I had such a huge lack of sleep. And it still affects me to this day. Once, you wake up at 3 or 4, something happens, and like I have a really hard time going back to sleep. This is that on all the time.
Yep.
And it's been, 7 years. And I just chose, I made sure that my area had emergency services if needed. I think we'd be having a very different conversation if I was like the only or jail in a tri-county area. But I just decided to set that boundary so I could have a life and I could sleep and I could function properly.
Yeah.
And be successful. And on call doesn't bother some people or it works for them. And that's great. And that's built into a lot of this as solo practitioners. I do try to be as available to my own clients as needed. They've got my personal cell phone number. It's really, I call it the bat phone. And,
Yeah.
younger people don't get that. But, for like the old, Adam West, benefit stuff where they have the bat phone. And so when I give it to good clients that I trust and we have a good relationship, I said, this is like the bat phone. You can't give this number out to anybody else, but I only give that number to people that I will not abuse it and will not bother me unless it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I have a work phone number and I do turn it off at night. I do turn it off on the weekends, but I do periodically check messages just in case. So that's kind of how I do it. It was just a boundary that I wanted to set because I was just like running off the rails, getting burned out. You know what I mean? Making money on these emergency calls, but having time for nothing else.
Yeah. you mentioned that, I mean, this is all great. I was going to ask you about your internship. So I'm glad you kind of came into it. And I 100% understand because, as you know, I did part of a surgical residency and had a similar experience. The details were a little bit different, but like I had to walk away from something that I was like knee deep in. And so I totally, totally get that. And I know how that feels and how you can feel so burnt out, like right out the gate, like
Right.
out of vet school and then out of training. And you're like, I'm a brand new baby vet. And yet I'm so distraught,
And that's the thing. And just be, completely mentally, physically exhausted is like, it was terrifying leaving. And I just like had in my head, like, I can't quit, I can't quit, I can't quit, And my family sent me down there like, this is affecting your mental health. Like you're having to see a counselor, you're on antidepressants, and then, you can't sleep. You're getting 2 to 3 hours and they're not giving you any breaks. And that's not how all of those internships are there.
Right.
All the scheduling was completely different. And I know that they've changed stuff after I left, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah.
But it was really unfortunate and it just did not work out. And, when I was reaching out for help, I had, I think, 5 or 6 close friends that we all did internships. Some of them were small animals, some of them were mixed rotating, some of them were equine, and we were kind of scattered over the US, some academia, some private practice. And after talking to them, we all felt the same. We were all miserable, we were all exhausted, and we were all seeing a therapist or counselor, and we were all on antidepressants because we were in an internship.
Yep.
And that begs the question, what's going on here?
Yeah.
It was almost rammed down our throats like work-life balance, work-life balance, work-life balance. And it is. And but the people preaching that like are practicing veterinary medicine in the real world.
Right.
They're the ones that have their total schedule. They're not on call. They're not doing this. They're not dealing with financial stress. They're like, oh, work-life balance, it's like sugar and rainbows. And it is so hard because I feel like the culture of veterinary medicine is the exact opposite of work-life balance.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's like our personalities or our character, but I feel like a lot of us are just like workaholics and we want to help everybody. And that we have trouble saying no.
Yeah.
And it's like work-life balance. And then they don't tell you how to do that. And
Right.
then you go into an internship or you go into a super duper busy private practice where you're having to be on call constantly. And it's like, well, we've done it this way for this long, and so you're going to do it too. And you're low man on the totem pole. So you're going to be on call every night. And, cause that's what happened to me 20 years ago and going to do that. And I just don't think it has to be that way anymore.
Oh,
And
God, yes. Yeah.
and internships and residencies are supposed to be challenging and they're going to be stressful no matter what. But, I just think that some of it ties into the not one more vet thing. And I don't think, it's like epidemic, for veterinarians. And I don't think it's just internships and residencies. I think it's the culture that has been created with veterinary medicine.
Starting
And,
from our education, starting from vet school, internship, and resident.
right. And people always ask me, and I'm so legally honest with them, but they're like, would you do it again? And I'm like, man, I don't know if I would. Probably not.
Right.
Probably not. And my faith is very important to me. I knew I was supposed to be a veterinarian since I was 4 years old. I just tell people like, it's been nothing else. Like I feel like God programmed me like a computer. Like, it's just like, nope, this is it.
Awesome.
And so I struggled in, undergrad was hard and applying and getting in, and I finally did it. And I was like, man, this is what I feel like I am meant to do. And this is what I'm doing. And this is what God's plan is for me. And then you get out and you start practicing and you're like, this is it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what it is. It's almost like you feel almost disenfranchised. It's like, I was never warned on like how people would treat us, and how people like get so upset and, arguing about money and this and that. And I think there's just this huge disconnect with clinicians in academia that sometimes have never practiced in practice. Or if they have, it's been 20 to 30 years. And I think, and like I said, I don't think these problems were just specifically with internships or residencies, whether it's, private practice or academia, but I think it's a problem across the board. And they preach work-life balance, and then you get out, they're like, just kidding. Just kidding. And
that's exactly it.
yeah. And so I had this passion for large animal medicine. I was trying to figure out how I wanted to do it, working in a small animal clinic. And I don't know if it's just my personality or my mentor, Dr. Bruce Cox. He was like, you're not going to be happy until you're a practice owner. But I didn't want to own a clinic. I didn't want all that overhead. I don't want to worry about, repairs of the light bill and employing 10 people.
Yeah.
And I said, like, how am I going to do this? And really, it's just like a search, like, how am I going to be happy? Like, I worked so hard. And it was such a struggle to go through med school, like undergrad, doing all that, internships that failed and didn't work out. And bouncing around from clinic to clinic, and I still don't feel happy. I still don't feel fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I just constantly searched for that for, 4 years. And I was like, man, maybe I'm the problem. Like, I started working at this clinic and that didn't work out. And so I went to this other clinic and I was there for like a year and then that didn't work out. And I'm on a third clinic and now I'm not happy. I'm like, what's wrong with me?
Right.
Like, why can't I just sit and fit in this mold and just be an associate and just be okay with being an associate? Like, well, what's wrong with me? And I mean, my mentor was right. He's like, you're not going to be happy till you do your own thing. And, push the baby bird out of the nest. And I'm glad that he did. Because I think if I didn't have that push and, I was upset when I got it, but, maybe I'd still be working 2 days relieved and then part-time, house call and thinking that I'm happy, but really not being happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing with house call business. You can go into it, and I believe you had somebody on your podcast, but they tried the house call thing, and then it wasn't for them,
Mm-hmm.
and then they didn't like it, and then they went back into private practice. I think that's totally okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's what's really cool about veterinary medicine in general is it is really versatile. I mean, you can be an associate, you can be practice owner, you can do mobile, you can do brick and mortar, and there's always going to be a need somewhere, and which is a great thing, and you're always going to be employed. And so that's kind of how I just got really burnt out. I was like, something's got to give. And so that's one of my boundaries that I set. And people get really mad and upset. And I'm sorry, I can't be there. I serve about 30 to 40 mile radius of Waco. I can't be in two places at once and one person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand people being upset, but I mean, you got to take care of yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you said so many things that resonate for me. Like, first of all, the whole just kind of going back to the training, that sort of mentality that I had to suffer through this. So you're going to have to also, what about change? What about trying to make it better for the future generations, right? What about not taking people and pushing them beyond the point of expanding their minds or their experiences and teaching them, but to the point where they're severely unhealthy mentally and physically, and they can't proceed anymore. They just can't even do the work at all, or that everyone in our profession has to be on medication. Like, that's not right.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
not right.
No, it's not. And, you sit here and it's obviously multifactorial, but it's like you scratch your head that, not all we're vets saying the statistics of suicide in general population versus other veterinarians. And we're like, are we all just have the same personalities and the same character? And we're drawn to this profession for one reason or another? Or is it the environment that we practice in? And
Right.
I think more of this has come to light the last 2 years with COVID and things shutting down and reopening. And it really shined a light on how we interact with clients
Mm,
and how we allow clients to treat us.
yeah.
And I have seen a lot of positive change that clinics are standing up for themselves,
Yeah.
that there's a no tolerance policy.
Mhm.
And I mean, last 2 years have been crazy. I think everybody can agree on that. Like,
Yeah.
so like, last 2 years don't count, but a
Right.
lot of things have changed and happened all over the world in the US and especially in veterinary medicine, doing curbside only and then opening it up and all of these different protocols and people get stressed and people get upset. It's just, it adds when you have a sick animal, I can't come into the clinic,
Yeah.
and I think there's been some really good things happening in the last couple of years that I see clinics, individuals that work in clinics, like standing up for themselves, doctors standing up for themselves and for their support staff and truly supporting them.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer, like it's one of my things, but you teach people how to be good clients. And
Right.
just because somebody pays every single one of their bills does not make them a good client.
That's right. That's true.
That's like one of my big things that I
That's a minimum,
honest.
right?
Yeah.
That's like you pay your bills on time. That's the very least you could do. Okay.
That's one of the main things when I started out is like, oh man, you can pay your bill on time. Like, boom. Like,
Such the standards, right?
yeah. And then I was like, you're going to be a great client. And then there's so much more to that. And so one of the things that, I mean, it's very surprising to me, but each one of my vet techs that I hired, I've had past ones, but they all say the same thing. About a week or two into working with me, they say, "Oh my gosh, your clients are so nice." And they're shocked. And it makes me sad,
Yeah,
because a lot of times veterinary technicians and support staff and front desk staff get the brunt of everything,
they do. Yep.
And in a house call setting, it's much more personal. Like my technician is always with me,
Hmm.
and I'm the one doing all the phone calls. And most of the time, people don't know they're talking to the doctor. I'm a little
Right.
picky about that, And so, but it's how I'm able to screen people. But every single vet tech I've ever had, they're just shocked. And they say, "Oh my gosh, your clients are so nice. These owners are so nice." And I said, "Yeah, because you teach people how to treat you. You teach people how to be good clients. And, if you can't provide common courtesy and be professional and in return, how we're treating you, like, I'm sorry, I can't provide you that care." And
Right on.
I'm finally starting to see more and more clinics on it, like putting the foot down. And that makes me really happy. I mean, it stinks that we had to get to this point.
Yeah.
But
I want to kind of extend that even to mentorship, like that expression, people don't treat you how you demand they treat you. They treat you how you accept, like what you tolerate. They'll treat you how you tolerate being treated. And I think it's the same thing for mentorship and being taught in a certain way. Like, I think I'm kind of proud of us both for walking away from a situation where our mentorship either was lacking or was abusive, just like a client that could do that to us, right? And I think the conversation is starting to open up in light of Not One More Vet about bad mentorship or absent mentorship that starts in vet school. And I think that's like I can't even like put into words how much thought I've given to that, our very training before we even hatch from our little vet eggshells, how we've been taught to accept abuse just from our own mentors. And then when the client treats us like that, it's like no big deal. It's like, oh, well, everyone talks to me that way. Everyone treats me like crap. So this is normal, you know?
yeah, there unfortunately like are situations where like that where you do have associate doctors or other veterinarians that are stuck in the situations, and those are really unfortunate. I mean, you have to remember that everybody deserves a certain amount of respect.
Mhm.
And I just feel like it's common courtesy. I kind of, they always show work-life balance, like down our throat. And then another thing, like, oh, mentoring, like you want to go into somewhere that has really good mentoring. And I think that just kind of became an advertisement or marketing scheme that they're like, oh, this is what new grads want to hear. It's like you'll get mentorship, and so that's always in the job things or they'll bring that up. And I mean, they always brought it up. He's like, oh, we'll mentor you as much as you want. But you don't know if it's good mentoring. You know what I mean?
That's it.
And it's like, well, we'll definitely mentor you. And not all vets that I work with are like this, but we'll mentor you, but in fine print, like you got to do it exactly how to do it for the last 30 years.
Right.
It's like invisible ink.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I'll mentor you, but like I'm going to teach you how to do the exact same way.
Right.
There's people who've been practicing for a long time and they're comfortable with how they do it and they can do it, but
There's no
I,
individuality, no ability to like develop the art of medicine.
we're just freedom practicing the type
Freedom.
of medicine you want to practice. Or
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to prescribe this med for this issue, or if I'm going to use such and such pain control, or if I want to do this such and such monitoring. And so I wonder if I just had was on the streak of bad luck and mentoring at 3 different clinics. That I mean, it's the type of mentoring, and I figured out the type of stuff that I don't want to do really quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just having freedom to practice the type of medicine I want to practice at the standard of care that I want to, and not being held back for that. But I think that goes hand in hand with work-life balance and mentorship. And it's like you're ultimately in control with how you let people treat you.
That's it.
And it can be super hard to stand up for yourself. I feel like I have like a very strong personality. I'm an extrovert, obviously, and it can still be really hard to stand up for yourself and not just, shut up and put up with something.
Right.
And I think it just happened enough where I was finally like, I'll just work for myself. I'll just do stuff how I want to do it at the standard of care that I think is the top standard of care. And I'm not going to have someone dictate how I practice medicine anymore. And that might sound like I have a huge chip on my shoulder.
No.
Or that I'm entitled.
No.
So like we bust our asses so hard. Like I went to school till I was almost 30. Like my entire life was dictated by class schedules and test schedules and everything. And then you get out and you're like, hey, I'd like to order this medication for this thing. And then you have a practice on your tongue.
Yeah.
And you're like, and it got to the point, what if I pay for it?
Yeah.
And they tell me no, or I would like to get this type of pain medication, or we need to do this type of law. And they tell you no.
Wow.
And it's like, what am I doing here? Yeah. And I mean, it's like, I've been working this long. And so it's like, maybe that's, and this is the only way that I could find that I could practice my standard medicine is going on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Brava. I'm really proud of you, and I resonate with so much of what you're saying. And I'm sure, everyone who's listening can hear little bits of themselves in this, in your story and your why and, the things you've been through. And so before we close, I have two questions. One, can you tell me if there's anything that you wish you'd known when you started your house call practice and that you might kind of be able to pass on that information or advice to someone who's getting started or maybe even someone who's in it?
I touched on it, but one of the main things is just because somebody pays their bills does not make them a good client.
Good.
And I really encourage people to sit down and you write out like a list of things that make somebody a good client.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. That was recommended to me. And I did that when I first started my practice. And, 5 years I found that list and like it's changed quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
which is very interesting. And so I highly encourage people that are thinking about going out there and starting a house call business is you need to think what makes a good client.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to have that list and you need to remind yourself of this. And that list helps you set healthy boundaries. Okay. And so definitely running a list and thinking about your ideal clients, just in general. I wish I would have known more about money in business. I mean, they teach us nothing. I totally wish I would have just taken some regular business courses or, watched some stuff on YouTube more. And finally, I wish I knew how to set better boundaries. And I think that's just something that's learned with a few mistakes, but those would probably be my main things.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your advice and your wisdom, and your experiences mean something, just someone else hearing what you've been through and knowing that they're not alone. I think it's going to be really, really important for our listeners. So in closing, would you be able to tell me what's your favorite beverage, tea, coffee, or whatever, since we are in the cafe of the
Yes.
House Call Vets?
Absolutely. I love coffee, but just regular black coffee.
All right.
Yes, we got a coffee maker where you put the whole beans in and then it grinds it and drops it in. And so we get fresh brown coffee every day. And so just regular black coffee. Fancy.
Fantastic. All right, Dr. Valerie, thank you so much for being with me today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the House Call Vet Cafe. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe or follow button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never have to miss an episode. This podcast is made specifically for you, so don't be shy if you'd like to reach out and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as the House Call Vet Academy, where I also share more valuable content. If you're interested in learning more about consulting for house call vets or the House Call Vet Academy online course and community, please click on the link in the show notes. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I can't wait for you to join us for our next episode of the House Call Vet Cafe.